An array is actually a type we haven't studied yet. There's a lot to them, so they get their very own section. Now, what is an array? An array is basically just a list. A real-world example would be a grocery list. Arrays get a little harder than this though. So far we know that an array is a list. An important note is that all elements of a list need to be of the same type. So an array could only be made up of all strings or all ints. It can't consist of a mixture of the two. Unlike your grocery list, however, an array could easily be made up of the same things. If we wanted to put eggs in our array 20 times, we could. You would really get sick of eating only omelets that week. We use arrays to store groups of values. The best example we've seen so far is the shopping list. Instead of making dozens of separate strings for each item, we can create an array to store all of them. We can use an array to keep the stats of our favorite sports teams, to keep track of the points in a board game, or even to keep track of all the students in a class. Arrays have a lot of uses, and we'll be able to see many more in practice. We're going to test your memory with this one. Way back in the beginning of the course, we talked about programming slangs. Some of the words that came up were immutable and immutable. These terms apply to arrays also. It is a good practice to always make the array immutable unless you know for certain you will need to change it. If you do know that you will need to change your array, then you will assign it to a variable. This helps Swift run your code better, and overall improves performance of your software. Creating an array doesn't have to seem like it's magic. It's actually almost exactly like creating the other types of variables and constants. You can assign a value to an array you already have, or you can initialize it without a value assigned. Let's recall how we created variables and constants in the past. We can use the same syntax to make our arrays. Let's check that out after a review. If we want to create an array of strings, we can do it in two ways. The first way is as seen above. We are used to seeing the variable and the name. The part that comes after the equals sign is a new territory, however. We use square brackets to tell the computer that we are declaring an array. It is necessary to separate each item in the array with a comma. If we want to create an array without adding data, we need to do it like this. We use the same syntax we usually do for creating a variable without data. However, with an array we need to use square brackets and write the type of array we need inside. We also need to add two parentheses at the end. You don't need to worry about why we need to do this just yet, but make sure you add the at the end. Arrays do not necessarily have to be made up of strings. You can make an array out of any type that you want. The most common uses are ints and strings, however. An array of integers is created in the same way as an array of strings. The end result is that we have a list of numbers instead of a list of words. In an array of integers, we don't need to use quotes as they are not words. But we do need to make sure we use commas, otherwise it won't work. Var array of numbers equals 132, 8723, 93, 184. The commas let Swift know that we are adding another value and it separates each item. If we don't have values, we could create an array of integers like this. Great work so far. Now you know how to create a list and put items inside it. We know that you can't make a list with different types, because we wouldn't want to buy food in numbers. You can't eat 10. The difference between arrays and other types is that you can change them. Let's find out more. Arrays allow us to change what is inside the list. Just like we could change what is on a shopping list. Maybe we want to add strawberries because we really like them with our yogurt. Perhaps we remembered that we already had eggs at home, now we can take them off our list too. In real life, if we wanted to take off an item or add an item to our grocery list, all we would have to do is write it down or cross it out. In Swift, there are a couple different ways to do each of these actions. Some of this looks like a basic addition, whereas some of it includes new methods we're about to learn. In this first case, we want to add an item to our shopping cart. We already have a few things inside. Let's say we just started shopping, so we've only grabbed 2 items. We have milk and cereal inside of our cart. Next, we want to get an apple. Our array looks like this so far. We want to add an apple to our array. The first way we can do this is by using the addition assignment operator. This operator looks like this, plus equals. This operator allows us to add an array to the array we already have. The items we add using this operator will show up at the end of the array. Let's see an example in action. In this example, we are adding an array with the same type, having an item named apple. Now if we were to check the array, we would see that it has apple added onto it. The operator we use takes 2 arrays and adds them together. They both have to be the same type of array in order for this to work right. Remember, we can't add apples and oranges. Once the arrays are combined, what we added gets placed at the end of the array. We can also add items to our shopping cart by using a method. So far we haven't seen any methods, so this will be our first one. Learn something new every day. A method is basically just using the word that carries out a task. If we told a robot to grab something and the robot grabbed it, that would be called a method. The method we will use on our shopping cart array is called append. We have to put a dot in front of it so Swift knows we are calling a method with it. Without placing anything inside, this would look like the following. Pretty easy, isn't it? Let's say we wanted to add blueberries into our infinitely expanding shopping cart. I can never get enough food when I go shopping. Everything looks so good. We would have to append the blueberry onto our array. We would do this by using the append method and placing the item inside of it. If we check our array at this point, we can see that we now have put a blueberry in our cart. In real life we probably wouldn't get just one, but for this example it works fine. Now we know multiple ways to add items to our arrays, but what if we want to remove them? In this scenario we have a different shopping cart. There are only 2 items inside. The items are a strawberry and an apple. We want to remove the apple from the shopping cart. We're in luck, there is a method specifically to take off the last item. This method is called remove last. If we want to get rid of the apple, we simply do the following. At this point there would no longer be an apple inside the array. If we wanted to, we could actually put the value we took off inside of a variable. In our case this would place the strawberry inside of last item in cart. In this lesson, we learned about arrays in Swift. We learned how to create lists and the different ways we can both add and remove items from a list. Great job. You've been doing great so far. Keep working at it and you'll be a pro before you know it. In our next lesson we'll discuss how to use functions.